9 days until the election. Early voting is underway in more than half the states, and there's talk of waves and a cultural shift. But the fact is, many House and Senate races are simply too close to call. We're joined now by the head of the Democratic National Committee, Tim Kaine. Welcome to This Week.
Christiane, good to be back.
Do you think that you will keep the House?
I do. I think it's going to be close, and as you point, these races are very close, but from this point forward, it's all about turnout and ground game, and we're seeing good early voting trends, and we've got work to do, but we think we can do it.
Are you saying that all the polling, the predictions are wrong? Because everywhere you look, it says that you're not going to keep the House.
But the polling is moving. We really haven't seen since Labor Day polls moving against us. Almost all the polls have been moving for us. Now, we still have some work to do, but what Democrats tend to specialize in is the ground game, the turnout. The more people turn out, the better we do, and we're seeing strong trends at the presidential rallies and early voting.
Do you think if the House remains Democratic, Nancy Pelosi will remain the Speaker?
Yes, I do.
No questions?
She's done a marvelous job in a town where it's hard to do heavy lifts, as you know, in doing heavy lifting in the House to work with the president, and I think she'll stay a Speaker.
What about the Senate? That seems to be more likely to stay Democratic, but is it? Do you think it will be?
We're not taking a single race for granted, so let me start there. But I think, 4 or 5 months ago, the Republicans thought they had a great chance at taking both houses. For a variety of reasons, the Senate has gotten much more difficult for them. And again, we're seeing this week strong moves in polling for our Senate candidates in California, in Washington. Pennsylvania has gone Joe Sestak from behind to even. So we feel like we've got a very good ground game, but a lot more work to do. We're not taking it for granted.
But it's incredible that you are so behind in so many of these races, for instance, in the House, because the president and the Democratic administration talks about the accomplishments and legislation has been passed, but it seems that the selling of it, if you like, has really fallen behind. And frankly, President Obama said the similar this week during a speech. Let's just listen to what he said.
One of the challenges we had 2 years ago was we had to move so fast. We were in such emergency mode that it was very difficult for us to spend a lot of time doing victory laps and advertising exactly what we were doing. I take some responsibility for that. I mean, our attitude was we just have to get the policy right, and we did not always think about making sure we were advertising properly what was going on.
So why didn't you, I mean, you're a seasoned poll, why didn't the Democratic National Committee, the group, make sure to get the message out if it was so powerful?
Well, Christiane, I mean, we have to do better as well. Now, I'm on TV all the time talking about the president's accomplishments, and I'm happy to say, as I campaign around the country, most Democrats are proud of their president, proud of the party, proud of the accomplishments. But what could the party have done better so that the narrative could still be controlled? Well, we're going to have to figure out a way to spend more time. As the president said, we plead guilty to focusing on substance. We were in an economic freefall with 2 wars that were open-ended blank checks, and we've taken a shrinking economy. It's now a growing economy. 9 months of private sector job growth. We've got a lot to do. Finding that right balance between focusing on the substance and the explanation of the work is something that we'll wrestle with. The good news is, if you have to err on the side, I'm glad we're focusing on the substance, because as you know, in Washington, that's often pretty hard.
I can understand what you're saying, and obviously the substance is what you want to be measured by, but you also want to win elections. Right. President Clinton, former President Clinton, has been out on the stump across the country. Doing a great job. He has spoken to one of your predecessors, Terry McAuliffe, who he was with, and basically has said that he's baffled, he's mystified, why the message hasn't gotten out better, why they haven't told the story in a better way of the economy, and why are Democrats, quote unquote, allowing themselves to be used as human piñatas.
Well, again, I don't see Democrats on the trail, many who are being human piñatas. I see them out campaigning vigorously on accomplishments. Look, we've saved the auto industry. But you are being battered around. The other side's always going to do that. We've saved the auto industry. We've saved the financial sector. We have passed a bill enabling women to get equal pay for equal work, and done historic health care reform, among many other bills. So we feel very good about the accomplishments, and that's why I think you see the polls closing. People understand that. They also understand what choice they have with the Republicans, who have stood in the way in all these accomplishments, and people don't want to go backward. They want to go forward.
You mentioned health care. I want to play something that you yourself said about this issue when it comes to elections.
Right. When we make this happen, and people immediately see the benefits that are going to come their way, I think this is going to be a great thing politically for the Dems, and we're trying to show members that they've got their constituents behind them if they vote with the president.
Well, right now the country seems to be really split on that, and many Democrats are doing their best not to vote and not to campaign, rather, on health reform.
Christiane, I've been in 40-plus states as DNC chair. The number of Dems I am with who are distancing themselves from health care is very small. The overwhelming majority are very proud of ending the abuses of insurance companies and providing pass to affordable coverage for families and small businesses.
But you know, it's one of the bashing points of the Republican side, and there are ads by Democratic candidates running away from the president and the reforms.
Of them. And of course, it's a talking point for Republicans. They want to roll it back.
But
they are taking huge money from Republican interests that are not disclosing who they are to run ads because they want to roll back health care. The vast majority of Democrats I campaign with are very proud of the health care accomplishment. You know, young kids in this country, and I've got three, age 15 to 20, can now stay on their family insurance policies till age 26, not 21. That is a huge advance for the youth of this nation. And whether it's youth or seniors or small businesses, there are significant benefits here.
You mentioned money.
Yep.
Obviously, money has been the topic of conversation, certainly on the campaign trail for the Democrats, and we see it all over the newspapers. You are complaining that there's a lot of money and a lot of undisclosed money.
It's the disclosure, right. There will always be money in politics, and that's going to continue to ramp up. But I think the issue that I'm focusing on is there is a concerted Republican effort, I believe, to shift campaign financing to entities that don't have to disclose who their donors are. You're going to have one of the architects of that effort, Ed Gillespie, on later, and I hope you'll ask him why he's against disclosure and why the Republicans continually vote against disclosure bills in Congress.
But the question is, you could do that too. It's a level playing field. Why haven't the Democrats played on the same field?
Because we believe in disclosure. I mean, at the DNC, every dollar I raise, we disclose where it comes from and how it gets spent. Every Democrat in Congress has supported a Disclose Act that would require anyone supporting any candidate to disclose. The American public has a right to know who is funding political campaigns, and that is a bedrock principle of ours that we're going to uphold.
And let me ask you again about some of the policies. Despite the crises that you inherited, the financial crisis, despite some of the legislation, the economy stays pretty stuck. It's not growing fast enough. The unemployment is pretty stuck at 9.6. Things haven't sort of moved. In an interview with the National Journal and in previous interviews, the president has said the following: it's going to be important for Democrats to have a proper and appropriate sense of humility about what we can accomplish in the absence of Republican cooperation. What does he mean by humility?
I think it's trying to find the balance between telling a story of accomplishment and change and improvement while acknowledging that we still have a long way to go. So when the president came in, as you know, Christiane, the economy of the United States was actually shrinking for the first time in about 70 years. We had come through a decade where we lost jobs, income declined, poverty gaps widened. Now the economy is growing again. Now, instead of 22 months of private sector job losses in a row, we've had 9 months of private sector job gains. But we know we're not where we want to be yet. We are climbing the ladder. We're getting out of the canyon we were in. We've got to keep climbing and not go backward. But you have to have that humility because a lot of people are still suffering, and we've got more work to do.
Do you think that, as you have more work to do, that there will be better chance for bipartisanship after this election or not?
Well, there is always, in an election cycle, I think the parties tend to go in their corners. So, for example, you saw the Democrats worked very hard on a small business lending bill that, from all the Republican rhetoric, you would have thought that they would have supported. Instead, they filibustered that bill for months because they really didn't want it to pass in the election cycle. But I do think there are matters like that, small business lending and other economic advances, that there well could be some accord on as we go forward once you get past all the Sturm und Drang of the election cycle.
And finally, what will happen after the election? Will you remain DNC chairman?
Well, I'm doing what the president wants me to do, and I've not had any conversation with him or the White House to suggest they want me to do anything different. So it's full speed ahead. It's been a tremendous honor to serve this president in this way.
Tim Kaine, chairman of the DNC, thank you so much indeed for joining us.